3 games, and then he played tomorrow, will those games be rated? Or
No.
once he wins the match?
Once he wins the match.
In blitz as well.
Once he's clinched 46.5 points, then that's it. The rest of the...
What do you think of that rule, guys?
I don't like it.
What a bizarre rule.
I mean,
I understand the logic behind it, that the
course.
player's not going to play very well, and so it's like kind of artificial.
Wait,
kind of like the
who's not going to play very well?
the loser, the one who's doing badly, or either way that it could just distort the normal level and create like a weird imbalance. Like for instance, that's one of the reasons in ICC and chess.com they create the rating pools where you play people randomly.
Exactly.
Because they find that if you play people 10 times in a row, oftentimes it creates a rating inflation.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's probably the logic behind it, but it seems like a little bit of an overkill.
They've started their game.
Yes.
And we've got
Maybe there's a new rule to think about, their little twist as we get a little time in the opening. Maybe we should have prizes for individual days' performance and then a bonus for winning the whole match. What do you guys think about that?
So nobody's ever dead in the water.
Right, exactly. You lost the first 3 days, but you're going to get extra money for the blitz day as opposed to worrying about the match itself, since the match is already a foregone conclusion. That way you're incentivized to play every single day.
I was talking to Tony about that, and one of the things that Tony was suggesting as a possibility is you play 4 matches. Essentially, you play a match of rapid, a match of 20, a match of 10, and a match of blitz. The point there is in a 12-game blitz match, as soon as I've scored 6.5 points, let's say, I'm not rating the games thereafter.
So then Nakamura was wrong yesterday to be worried about increing his rating against Vesseline.
Right, because
correct.
He had won the match.
So he, oh wow.
Yes.
That's so interesting.
Go tell him. He's
Gosh. Spoiler alert. Sorry about that, because I really was looking forward to that challenge of could Magnus become the first human player ever to breach 3,000.
Well, if you keep winning, Magnus, you're 3,000 in our hearts.
Exactly. And what
Magnus
we have on
doesn't
the
care about that.
Well, he cares about somebody's heart, and apparently that's helping him play spectacularly.
There we go. We started with a Bogo Indian, and through the miracles of transposition, we've come to a kind of a check Benoni, where we see not a King's Indian formation with the bishop traditionally on the fianchetto square G7, rather the bishop is on E7. And you can see that white is preparing his expansion on the queen side, and black, I think Magnus has just played the move knight H5 with the idea of preparing his own advance on the king side.
He played that a couple of moves ago. Moves were played G3, followed by G6, knight E3, and knight G7.
Let me just go back to how it happened. A6, bishop D2, knight H5, G6, G3, pardon me, G6, knight E3, knight G7. Fianchettoing the knight to prepare the expansion on the king side with F7, F5. Again, it's well, a great strategical trench warfare here. In these types of formation, it's kind of a funny knight on E3, but I think that white might need to prepare his own F2, F4. Normally, the knight is on C3, and white plays knight E1 and knight D3, and gets his knight out of the way of his F-pawn. It's not so easy to do.
Is G4 a bad move here?
G4, well, it's a kind of a positional gamble, because you are giving up this F4 square.
I'm just hoping you can exploit it now and in the future. He played bishop D3 to slow down.
I think bishop D3 was... G4 is like one of those committal moves, a little bit anti-positional, but he definitely wants to slow down F7, F5 break, so why not just play bishop D3 to put a stop on it?
Now knight F6, and...
Knight F6 is normal in these positions.
White castled? King side, excuse me.
King side. And normally speaking, because you're behind in space, you kind of want to trade a piece or two. Notice that the knight moving out of D7 has opened up this diagonal for the bishop. So either bishop H3 and knight G4 right away, preparing once again the move f5 now that your bishop supports the break.
And white needs to get his own break going with b4, but that's going to be
Correct.
met by b6. You might get the open file, but it takes a long time in these positions to make any hay on that side.
Exactly.
So black will be looking for his f5 action and hope that it will lead somewhere.
Exactly.
4 pieces guarding f5 right now for white. That is 3 pieces and a pawn, and we see knight g4 was indeed played. The knight on f6 was not one of them guarding the f5 square.
It was, in fact, in the way.
It was in the way. So he's knocking out a defender of the f5 square with this knight g4 move, and he's prepared with his knight, rook, bishop, and pawn on g6 to protect the f5 square himself. So he's going to have a free ride. In my simple arithmetic,
Yeah.
just counting pieces works, that means that white will not be able to stop f5 at all.
Precisely. And what you were saying, Maurice, if you ever get in a b4, b6,
Which he's
you
tried
don't-
b4.
You don't really get any great results. Okay, you do have the open b file, but the business squares b8 and b7 are all nicely protected there. Normally when you get in b4, b6, you want to play a4 with the idea of undermining on a5. These threats on the queen side are really slow. And
Really slow.
that was why we've just seen a capture on c5, b takes c5, b takes c5. And now,
Rook b1,
which rook, by the way?
a rook.
Rook a1 to b1. Now we're about to see knight takes e3, bishop takes e3. Kind of like putting the bishop on h3. And we have seen knight takes e3.
Knight e3, bishop
I like
e3.
Bishop h3.
Bishop h3 has been played.
Just snuggling up to the white king, attacking the rook,
And here
forcing
comes
the rook
Rook
e1.
E1.
And
f5
now
is
the
just
big
screaming to
There
be
it
played,
goes.
and there it
Of
is on the
course.
board.
Hey, you make an attack sound so soft. Snuggling.
snuggling, killing you softly, gently, if you will. Now there's some serious. You're going to have to take on e4 on f5. I don't like it, but the problem is f5, f4, followed by g6, g5 is simply a monstrous attack.
Now-
for better or for worse, you have to take on f5.
Big moment because bishop h6 is also going to have to happen, I think.
Precisely.
Otherwise, he'll have
You
no
want-
kind of fluidity in his position. Everything will be congested. So Magnus is thinking right now because he realizes this move is coming and takes. I don't see anything. Whoa, he played another move. He played bishop back to f1, trading off the light squared bishops, which is usually a plus for white in the attack. White really does not want, black really likes to keep his light square bishop, generally speaking. So this trade, I think, worked in Ding's favor, and now he's just played bishop and queen d7, and now he's got a chance to trade off his bishop as well. I kind of like what happened now for white in the last couple of moves.
I completely agree with you that after the move bishop f1, again, black wants to play e4, f4 types attacks. You would have thought
Yes.
that bishop g4, gaining a tempo so that you could then break with f4, keep the pieces on the board. You're attacking, keep the pieces on the board. This trade, followed by bishop g5. I'm not saying that I actually like white's position. I still have a preference for black's position, but I think that Ding's ability to hold the position has increased in
And
the
a
last
couple of
3-4
moves
moves.
played,
Bishop
they're
and
playing
h7,
very-
queen e7, knight h4.
What has happened? Sorry, after bishop g5.
he played
then.
e4, trade on e7, and then
Knight
h4.
I
And
gotcha.
And then Magnus against knight
F4.
h4 played f4.
Yes.
And what was the threat that made him play knight back to g2?
I think he was simply afraid that the knight might get stranded.
But what about rookie? I guess rook e1, rook e8.
Yep. So knight g2 was played, asking black what his intentions are. Do you want to play f3? Do you want to take on g3? I'm guessing he wants to play f3.
Why would you even hesitate? Where is the knight going to go?
Well, at least I can go in this case to the
Knight
e3.
f5?
Knight f5. I'm hoping I'm not going to get mated.
I guess you're too fast. My queen wants to be on h3, obviously, but it
course.
takes a long time
To get
make
there.
that happen. So maybe that is a problem. This kind of liquidation, white is very close to being okay.
Exactly.
Very close.
Very close.
And knight to f5
Was played.
Immediately was played, yeah.
Not F4?
No, not F3, knight
No,
F5
give-
right away.
Magnus now sees that his knight can head to d4 and to f3,
And knight
and there's some
takes F4, knight
scary
D4
business going
has
on.
been played.
Queen b2 of all moves? Wow, that's begging to get mated, no?
It sure is. What about
Man,
Rook
is
F4?
he's actually holding on here.
Rook F4. What about the
No, I can take the
sacrifices?
No, he can take it. The problem is, if you play knight f3, he's going to play king h1, rook g1 check, and rook g2.
I'm not in time. I'm not fast enough. I will be walking into a pin.
Oh, and also, yeah, your knight can't leave d4 because you might be getting mated. That's what Ding is seeing. He's seeing that his rook can go to g1 at some point after all this happens. That was pretty quick.
Well, what about
King h1?
again snuggling? Well, king h1, queen. I'm a little bit worried about knight e6, Maurice.
96 for... Oh, in this position. Yeah, that makes...
So,
96 now... So he did play queen g5.
he did play queen g5. Oops, sorry. Not the exchange sacrifice, but queen
All right,
g5.
what happens on 96? 96, knight f3, king moves, and the queen goes to h6 maybe? And you have to play h4?
King goes where? Queen
No, I was
goes
going to go to h1. Why did you go to g2?
So I could play h3.
Oh, instead. Got you.
Queen h6.
96 has been played.
Very
And
good.
check has been
Check.
played, and here's the question mark as to where to put it.
I'm
Where do you
thinking
put-
king g2. You suggested king h. I'm a
Well,
little
we
bit.
have two questions.
I'm a
What do you-
little
which
bit
one do you go
worried
on?
about this, so that was why I went king g2.
No, you can't leave the mating
And he
idea.
And he
has
has
played
played
He
king
did play king
G2,
g2,
queen
queen
G4.
to
Queen
g4.
G. Now I'll take the draw. I'll play h3 and allow a perpetual check.
Okay.
The knight going back and forth. I will bail out with a great deal of happiness if I was white here. Ding Liren, just making sure.
There's no additional tactic
Yeah.
that surprises him from somewhere on
Exactly.
this board, but it does look as though h3 forces
Would-
Magnus to concede ground and just
And-
play the perpet.
That's right, because after knight H4, king H2.
Is forced.
Yeah,
Hey,
you're defending
that's-
H3.
That's a little bit
Queen
of a
H4, we
victory.
can take on H4.
A big time victory
So it's
considered
just-
what position Ding had. Magnus will be a little bit upset with himself because I think
Because he didn't win another game in a row?
Well,
Yes,
because he was
yes.
making a
This would have been
beauty
6 in a
mark.
row.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's making a beauty mark, and there you have it, a perpetual check. It
Forced
was
repetition.
A forced repetition. And Ding will at least breathe a sigh of relief, and Magnus will say, hey guys, where did I fritter away a significant advantage? I think it was really about here, and this was the point that actually Magnus played very quickly. He took on f1 without too